Hi everyone, good afternoon. I welcome you all to this webinar, and in today's webinar we are going to learn how to use Kredily's payroll module, and we are going to understand how to do the settings, how to define the components, the salary structure, process payroll, and generate payslip as well. So that's the agenda of today's webinar. And before we get started with the webinar, I would request all of you to download Kredily's mobile application, which is available in the Play Store. Open Play Store, type Kredily, and the first application that you see in the list is what you need to download. Having said that, let's start. So as I said, this is going to be about payroll. So we are specifically going to talk about the entire payroll module. So for that, I'm going inside the payroll module. And in payroll module, the very first thing that you will be doing is your settings. So whatever you guys have been following as an organization, when I say following, I mean your settings, your PFESI settings, your statutory compliance settings. This needs to be added in the system. This needs to be defined as a set of rules that you guys are following as an organization. So the first thing is your payroll settings in advanced settings. You will have basic settings like pay frequency, pay cycle, your payroll leave input cycle, your payout date, your cutoff date, and your payday calculation. You can include week offs or exclude it. You can include holidays or exclude them. And your access control, wherein you can show tax projections to your employees and tax computation to your employees. So these are the basic features. Then in ESI and PF settings, you will get an option to define PF and ESI according to your preference. So when I say PF and ESI according to your preference, you can define the definition of PF, define the way PF has to be calculated for your organization. For example, it can be 12% of basic, it can be 12% of the entire gross salary, it can be a fixed amount, or it can be a customized formula that you can define. And then your employer PF can also be a part of your CTC, or you can exclude it from CTC. That's just a yes or no toggle. You can turn it on or turn it off according to your preference. Then you can enable the statutory minimum ceiling by turning it on. Statutory minimum means regardless of how much your basic salary is, your PF will be calculated only on 15,000 rupees, which is going to be 1,800 rupees flat, and that will be the maximum amount of PF that will be deducted for your employees. And once that is done, you will also get an option to include the admin charges in PF. And when I say you can include admin charges in PF, you can the 1% of admin charges can be added to your employees the PF. Basically in CTC it will be included. Your employers are supposed to take care of this admin charges, but if at all you want to give this on the employee CTC, you can do that as well. So employee will be bearing that 1% of admin charges that will be included in CTC. Then when it comes to ESI settings, you will have the basic 0.75% of gross salary and 3.25% of gross salary for employee and employer respectively. You can also allow individual override option, which gives you an option to override ESI for a particular employee. In overview, you can see all of these details for your employees: how much is the ESI, how much is the PF, and how is it getting deducted, how much is getting deducted, is there a VPF. All these details can be seen in the overview section. Then you have your PT settings. In PT settings, you will just turn it on. You will not define anything because the system will automatically calculate the professional tax. All you need to do is you will just have to inform, or you will just have to tell the system about the work location of your employees. So just turning on PT and defining work location of your employee will be helping you to deduct PT automatically. Then we also have the declaration settings. This is where you will be enabling the declaration window for your employees. You can say it can either be monthly or yearly. If it is yearly, you can define it from 1st of April to 21st of March or 31st of March or 10th of March, depending on your organizational preference. And once that is done, the next setting is your component settings. In component settings, you can define your base components. You can define your recurring components. So when I say base components, these are basically your normal salary components, which cannot be so these components will always be there no matter what salary structure you will create: basic, HRA, PF, ESI, special allowance. These are mandatory. That's why we call them as statutory salary structure components. Then we have recurring salary components. Recurring salary components basically means you can create any component according to your company's policy, your company's preference. You can create a component by giving it a name, or if you want to edit one of the components that's already created, you can create on the component's name. You can even change the component. You can change the definition of it, if it should be included in CTC, if it should be excluded from CTC, or if you want this to be taxable or non-taxable, and you can individually override it, or if you want, you can disable it. You can make it a loss of pay dependent component or a loss of pay independent component, and you can define a value for the component as well. You can make it as a flat by entering a flat value, or you can even say it is a slab wise and create a slab. 0 to 3 lakhs, what should be the value, and then 3 to 5 lakhs, what should be the value. You can create it slab wise as well. I'm going to keep it flat right now. I'm not going to make any changes. Then in variable, there is an option for you to create variable components as well. Variable components means these are the components which will come once in a year or twice in a year, depending on what sort of component you are creating. If it is an annual bonus, it is, like the name itself says, it is an annual component, and this will come only once in a year. Now, annual bonus, the only difference between a recurring component and a variable component is that recurring component will come every month and variable component will not come every month. Not necessarily, it could be, but if you're defining it as once a year, then it will only come once in a year. If you're defining it as half yearly, then it will only come twice a year. If you're defining it as quarterly, then it will only come 4 times a year. So it is like that. But if you want incentives to be given in the name of variable component, then you can make it as a monthly component as well. In that case, it will appear every month. This also can be a flat value, or you can create slab. And tax deduction, you can say I will deduct tax one time, or you can say that I will deduct tax across the rest of the financial year. So both is possible. Then you can also create ad hoc components. Ad hoc components are basically the components which are not defined in the structure, which are not part of your CTC. You can create ad hoc components, ad hoc earning components, or ad hoc deduction components as well. That's about components. Then you have your payout settings. This is where you will be adding your employees' bank details. You can add them in bulk as well. Then your payslip settings, we have 8 different formats of payslips. You can choose whichever is suitable for your organization. Then we have bank integration. We have 2 different ways of doing salary payouts in Kredily. One, you can use KredPay, which is our virtual banking system. You can transfer money to this account from whichever bank account you're using, and then do the payout from here directly. Or if you're using an ICICI bank account to do the payout, you can you can integrate that with Kredily and do the payout directly from your directly from Kredily through your ICICI bank account. Then the next thing is to create a salary structure by gathering all the components that you have created. For that, you will have to go to create structure. You can create a structure by clicking on the create new structure option, create a regular structure. For example, I have created one structure here. I've added basic. Basic is 40% of CTC. Then I have added HRA. HRA is 40% of basic. Then I have PF, I have medical allowance, I have conveyance, I have ESI, monthly incentives, and special allowance. You can create any such components. You can add any number of components. There is no limitations to it. Let me add one more component here. I'm adding vehicle allowance. Okay, you can add any number of components and save it and assign it to your employees as well. So like this, you can create structures, any number of structures as well, depending on the department you're dealing with, depending on the location you're dealing with. You can create any number of salary structures in Kredily. There is no cap on that. And once the salary structure is created, once it is assigned to your employees, the last thing you will be doing is to run payroll in the system. To run payroll, you need to understand a few details. You need to understand few information before processing payroll. What are those information? basically you need to know the attendance details of your employees, of all your employees, how many employees are present, how many are absent. For example, if I have to look at this, Varun is one of my employee. How many days Varun is present, how many days he is absent, how many loss of pay is he going to get, how many days leaves has he applied for, how many leaves have been approved, how many leaves are not approved, yet in pending state. All of those details will be showed to you. Then you also have an option where you can see whose salary has been revised in this particular month. Then you also get details about what sort of variable components and ad hoc components you are going to get, and your salary on hold details. For example, if you are holding an employee's salary, the system will show which employee's salary is held. Or if you want to hold any particular employee's salary in this particular month, you can add that employee by clicking on Add Employee and add the employee's salary on hold. Or if you want to change the existing employee's salary on hold status, you can click on Edit and you can change the status to pay or on hold or whatever you want to do with it. Then once everything is done, you also get an option to tax override. Well, this option is not actually needed because Kredily as a system will calculate income tax and professional tax accurately and appropriately. But still, for whatever reason, if you want to override income tax or professional tax, you can use this option, click on the edit button and make changes to your tax information. And once everything is done, you can process payroll for your employees. For that, I'm going to May month's payroll, and then I will click on the pay register. And here you choose your employee. You can click on the employee and process payroll for him. I'm just going to click on the run payroll button and process payroll. Sorry, I think I haven't processed payroll for the month of April. I'm really sorry about that. So see, in this month, I'm going to click on this employee and process payroll for him. So you can do the same for any number of employees. You can do this in batches as well. For example, if you want to process payroll only for 10 employees or 5 employees today and the rest of the employees in the coming session, you can do that. So now I have processed payroll only for one employee. Now I'm going to also generate his payslip. I click on generate payslip. This will generate payslip for my employee. So like this, you can generate payslip for all of your employees as well. And this is the whole process of running payroll. And the last thing is to do the payout. Once you have processed payroll already, you can select your employee and you can do the payout as well. It's just a one click and normal NEFT transaction. If you have integrated your bank with Kredily, you can do the payout also directly from Kredily, which will hardly take about a couple of minutes. So this will save a lot of your time and a lot of your process oriented hassles that you will or you might face if you are doing it manually through your bank. And after that, you can also download your statutory reports like PFECR, ESI report, consolidated reconciliation report of your gross and net pay report. Everything can be downloaded from right here. So this is the entire payroll processing or the payroll processing process. If you have any questions, please write your questions in the chat section. I'll be more than happy to answer.